Hey guys, welcome to the Gaming Nexus show. It's an offshoot of GamingNexus.com, and on the website we mostly talk about just video game related stuff, but on the podcast we like to get a little weird with it at times, and Max has promised that he's going to get
and
weird.
So we also talk about movies.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
And then I think we talked about books briefly last week too.
That's when it gets downright uncomfortable.
Oh,
yeah.
Not me. I don't know how to read.
Anyway, joining me this week, as always, is writer Eric.
Hey.
And Max, what title do you like? Developer? Do you
Sultan?
And Sultan Max?
No, just kidding. Yeah, I guess indie developer.
Indie developer, yeah. There you go. And indie developer Max is here, of course. We're not with our boy Joe this week. Joe from Games and More. He is out doing probably real world stuff, I'm assuming.
You know what he's doing? What he's doing? He's doing a weird thing. I just saw it on Facebook. What he's doing? He is participating in an Aaliyah tribute night at a club.
Okay.
Aaliyah tribute.
Is that like anniversary just recent? Right?
I guess. I don't know. She's been in the news a lot lately because of all the R. Kelly stuff. And so, so it's for people who don't know, Joe is like outside of streaming. We always introduce her as our resident streamer, Joe. But he also is a performer. Like he is a full-time performer. That's how he makes his living. He's in a number of different bands around Columbus. And kind of like fancy bands, like not just... little bands, like bands that play big events, like you can see Joe perform at like the 4th of July fireworks, and you can see him perform down on the Commons, downtown and stuff like that. And so he's always like at weddings and doing events and this and that and the other. And then he also he has a comedy group that he performs with, Affirmative Distraction. It's a all black improv group. Yeah. And they've gained a lot of traction over the last couple of years too. So yeah, Joe's busy. Yeah. We're lucky to get him when we get him, because he's like, especially this time of year, he's really running around like a lunatic.
Yeah, it sounds like it when he talks about it.
And of course,
also moved to Wednesdays, which threw him off.
Yeah,
it totally threw him off, because that's the night that we do Aaliyah tributes.
Yeah, I guess a little bit.
If we keep moving our podcast night, he'll never be able to find us.
A little bit of like formatting news. I guess we're going to move towards recording on Wednesdays and releasing on Wednesday evenings instead of Tuesdays, because it works better for most of us now. And Joe, just not tonight, he said. That was literally
just not tonight. Yeah, going forward, he's good with Wednesdays. So,
but Joe will be back to ruffling my feathers next week, I have no doubt. Anyway, there's a lot of like movie kind of shakeups kind of coming down the pike. It seems Shang-Chi releases this weekend. I am excited for it. It's the first movie that I'm planning to see in theaters since we saw Tenet last year, when the theaters opened back up. My wife and I went and saw Tenet, and it was literally just the two of us in that theater, and it was such a cool experience. But so I guess over a year.
I love that. Do you guys remember the Arena Grand?
Yeah.
I saw what's the Tarantino movie? In The Bastards.
Inglourious.
Inglourious.
Yeah. I saw that down there on their biggest screen, and I was the only one in the theater. And like I just went down one afternoon. I had a day off. I just rolled down there at like 1 p.m. to catch the matinee, and I was the only one there, and it was glorious. Like just so fun to be in the theater by yourself, and they have that giant screen. Too. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, they did.
No, go ahead, man.
They did a re-release of Empire Strikes Back this past year, and me and my wife went to Easton. We're the only ones in the theater. It was dope.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Shang-Chi is coming out, and it's only coming out to theaters, which we have kind of talked about. But I guess it sounds like they're using this as kind of a guessing game, where if it does well, they'll release Eternals in another couple of months, and if it doesn't do well, they're going to maybe push Eternals and Spider-Man back.
Yeah, back to when is the question.
So here's the thing. A lot of movies are changing their dates. Top Gun was supposed to come out in November. It's now coming out on Memorial Day of next year, so of 2022.
November of 1989? Wait, isn't that? Are they remaking that?
Yeah, there's a new one.
There's a new one.
It's a sequel. It's
Yeah.
a sequel.
Is it Top Gun 2 or Top Gun 1
It's called
again?
It is
Top
Top Gun 2.
Maverick, I think, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise, the whole jam. It's like
Yeah.
the whole deal
right.
again.
Even
And it was
Goose.
supposed to like it's at least a year late now, right?
Oh, at
like,
least, right? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they keep pushing it back. They need to come with my Top Gun. Like, if there's anything that might get me into a theater, it's Top Gun. I was 14
That's what's
when
gonna
the
get
original.
you in the theater is Top Gun.
Oh, dude, Top Gun was my jam. Like, talk about going to see a movie in the theater when there's nobody there. My buddy and I went and saw Top Gun like 6 times in Toledo when I was 14, and we had it on videotape too. The videotape actually came out while the movie was still in the theaters. It was one of the first tapes you could buy, so we'd like go see it and then go home and watch it. And Top Gun, dude, all the way, 100%.
So Top Gun's moving back again. That moves the new Mission Impossible movie that was supposed to go in that slot to September of next year instead of like May. Jackass Forever, which I know, Max, you're very excited for the new Jackass movie. It's no longer, it's no longer going to be in October. It's going to be in February. Ghostbusters Afterlife is getting pushed back, but only a week. So from November 11th to November 19th, although I bet that's not staying around. And then the only other movie that is currently sticking around is James Bond, which was originally scheduled. I don't know if you know the history of this movie. It was supposed to come out in 2019.
Yeah,
originally.
it's old. It's just old at this point.
It's had 4 separate delays. And my understanding is they're going to literally have it come out on October 8th, I think, because they're losing so much money on pushing it back and back and back that they keep spending millions of dollars and then pushing it back. So they're just like, hey, we're going to put it out after all. Anyway, we're losing too much money. It's now like the most expensive Bond film, like twofold or something like that. Something ridiculous.
I think at one point, some service, it was maybe Amazon, was offering them like a ludicrous amount of money to put it on streaming. And they were like, they still feel like they're going to make more than that in theaters, which at this point, like the reason I say push it back to when is because we talk about this a lot, but I'm not buying that this is going away. I don't think COVID's going away, man. Like, it just seems like it keeps cycling and getting worse, and then there'll be a new variant.
Yeah.
And, I just don't know what's going to happen with the movie industry. I can see an argument for just biting the bullet and putting this stuff out. I can see an argument for, just putting it straight to streaming. I mean, movies are not going to be, they're not going to be as expensive as they are now, right? I mean, they're going to stop making giant movies that cost this much, right? They're going to have to. Yeah, I mean,
find different ways.
The current model is not sustainable. Like, everybody is proceeding right now as though this is going to come to an end, and then we'll all be able to go back to theaters and throw them $300 million to see their movie. I don't know, man. I don't know if that's happening in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. Like, nobody at the beginning of this was guessing that here we would be in September 2021 still,
and even talking about it, right? Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, are you kind of over even just like talking about COVID as a talking point? I feel like it's always a talking point. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just like the thing now. It's just, let's all have
as though it affects everything.
And it does, but like, man, it's just like ad nauseum. Like, we get it, COVID. Like,
I mean,
it's just
like,
so...
it's kind of funny because sometimes now when I do see friends and stuff, like, we have moved past talking about it. Like, it's not even a topic that comes up. Like, we went to a gathering
of the Juggalos, it was right.
Yeah, total Juggalo gathering. They're going to retire soon. They're going on their last retirement world tour because what's his name, Shaggy DA, has a heart condition or something. So
I thought it was violent.
I don't know.
The fact that the two of you combined, could name the 2 members of ICP has a little bit.
I hear they're really nice.
The guy's real name is not Shaggy DA. I don't think.
You don't think he was born with that name?
No, I don't think that's the name he goes by. It's the name of the Disney movie where the guy is the district attorney and he turns into a dog.
Oh, Shaggy Dog.
Maybe it is Shaggy.
I don't know.
It could be Violent J though, for sure. Yeah, and you're right. It is Violent J that is having the heart condition. And what were we talking about?
Let us not be wrong.
Something about
we
movies.
weren't talking about COVID.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the gathering of the Juggalos. So yeah, we saw some friends, and they had like a campfire or something, and we left, and I was like, you know what? Nobody even brought it up the entire time we were there. Like
Crazy.
it didn't even come up one time. And it was kind of nice. It was kind of a relief to not have that conversation every single time you see people. I don't know.
So those are that's my movie news. Things are moving. They're moving. They're always moving.
I don't know. Are you guys going to go to the theater to see the Kung Fu this weekend?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. We've been excited about it. The reviews are really positive, so I really want to see a Marvel movie. I haven't seen Black Widow yet, and I don't even know why I haven't. I want to. I just haven't. I guess because I can just like turn on my TV and watch it now. I guess because I can do that. I don't want to do that. You know, like it's that weird thing where I was like looking forward to it. Now I'm like, oh, it's here, but I don't know. But Shang-Chi is like, it's new. I don't know what's going to happen. I know very little about the character. Where I guess like Black Widow was like, I know what happens to her. You know,
she's going to die.
Yeah, like it takes place between like movies.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't think I'm gonna make it out to the theater for this one unless my son like really talks me into it.
Yeah.
Like we've been canceling stuff. Like we were supposed to fly out to Red Rocks to go to a concert later this month, and we canceled it and sold our tickets and stuff. I still have tickets to go see what's his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah.
The physicist guy?
The physicist?
Yeah, my wife got me tickets to go see him at one of the theaters here in Columbus in a few weeks. He's going to like show parts of movies and then talk about how they get the physics all wrong. And that's like exactly the sort of geek shit that I'm like super down for. So
he really hates on Titanic. I know that.
He's literally just taking his Twitter account to theaters.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm going. I'm totally there for it.
The actually tour. All right, dude.
Yeah, it is.
Have fun.
I'll let you guys know. I'll report back.
Yeah.
So we haven't canceled that yet. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we just haven't made any plans to cancel plans because it's just we weren't big like going and doing stuff kind of people, and this is just a great excuse to continue to be those kinds of people.
Yeah, the Red Rocks thing, we actually made plans before COVID, and then it was bumped a year, and then so the year anniversary was now, and so we ended up we're not going to do that. So moving on.
Let's talk about China.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, right? Everyone's favorite world power, superpower, right?
The place where we're suddenly even more glad we don't live.
So let's talk about 2019. They passed a law in 2019 about video games. This comes from Reuters. This is the article I chose because I thought they just did a good job of defining it. But so in 2019, they passed a law limiting minors to less than an hour and a half of online games on a weekday and 3 hours on weekends, right? With no game playing allowed between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. during the weekdays. It also limited how much minors could spend on virtual gaming items per month. So the maximum amounts were ranging somewhere between $28 and $57 depending on their age. So that was in 2019. And I don't really remember seeing a lot about that when it came out originally. I mean, I remember like seeing a blip about it here or there or something, but never really dug into it. And
no one's really talked about like how well it's gone over that their government gave them a bedtime and an allowance.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wonder how that went. I wonder how they enforce it. Like, how does that work? Like the mechanisms, like if you pass a law like that, do you have a mechanism in place to enforce it? Or do you scurry trying to figure it out? Oh, they do. Okay.
Yes. It's essentially ID cards. You have an ID code that you have to put into these games before you can even play them to identify who you are. Ooh. So they're kind of putting the limit or the responsibility on the companies, not the kids or their parents. So it's kind of on the companies to be like, hey, you need to create software that can verify the age of this person. And that's what they've kind of gone to. Is like, here's your ID for this program. You need to put in your ID before you play any game, and this will prove that you're in that age range.
Do you think there's a black market for ID codes? Because I
absolutely, of course, right? There's a black market for everything. Why wouldn't there be a black market for this?
Yeah.
The new law is a little more ridiculous than that.
Okay.
They're
Are
literally.
you not? Wait. Before we go, Max, are you not familiar with the new law? Have you not read about this yet?
No, I haven't heard anything. You sent out a Slack message that said we need to talk about China, and I was like, all right, sure.
Okay, good. Let's.
I have virgin ears to this news.
So Max,
Cool.
they limited it to originally, right? Like I said, an hour and a
You
half
said like an hour
on the
and a half
weekdays
yeah.
and 3 hours on the weekends. How much more ridiculous do you think they can get?
They're taking TV time away too.
It's still video game time.
Oh, it's still video game related. If you're playing Super Mario 3, you can only complete a maximum of 2 worlds a day, even if you're speedrunning.
Oh, that's not bad.
If you're playing Call of Duty, they have like a headshot limit. Once you kill like 8 people, then you're done for the day. You have to go cool off.
The new restrictions forbid children under 18 to play online games from Monday through Thursday. That took place starting today. So no video games Monday through Thursday. They can play for 1 hour, 1 hour a day between 8 and 9 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays.
Oh, wow.
So if you're 17 and you're in China, your Fortnite time is real low. Real low.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
So they're basically banning video games.
They're basically banning
a little bit
video
as a
games.
treat.
And the interesting thing that I wonder is like, okay, so you have to enter in this code to play online. Like, what about like consoles? Like, what if you have like a Switch? Like, I don't know. Is there a Switch? Does China allow Switch?
They
like,
just recently allowed Switches, I believe. I think that was a big thing within the last year that they're like now allowed to have Switches.
So like Game Boys. Because like, how would you? You can't with a Game Boy. You can't stop anybody.
Those are super offline.
Red.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if you got a PS2, you're golden for that Final Fantasy X action. Like, you can just Final Fantasy X it up all day long. But is that where they want to be and what they want to be doing? You know, like, I don't know. Like, is the rule just online games?
No, but 62.5% of Chinese minors often play games online. 13.2% of underage mobile game users play mobile games for more than 2 hours a day on weekdays, according to state media. Let's see, the other stuff I had. According to a report from the Beijing Youth Legal Aid and Research Center, over 90% of minors with gaming addiction problems are boys, and roughly 70% come from blue-collar families. So it seems like they're really targeting a very small subset of people that they're actually like affecting with this kind of blanket thing. You know, this one-size-fits-all kind of like solution.
Right.
I don't think a one-size-fits-all solution is really very like realistic. You know, I think that's why like in the United States, I mean, that's why we allow like the states to make a lot of like rules, right? I mean, we allow for that because, you know, people in California are different than people in Texas or Ohio.
I mean, it's still pretty one-size even there.
In a lot of aspects, but you know, I think it's kind of crazy. The other thing, though, too, that I was curious about, Eric, was like, do you limit your kids' playtime at all? Have you?
It's interesting. So my 2 older boys I had shared custody of, right? So I did my best when they were young to keep them away from online shooters. I did my best to keep them away from like Grand Theft Auto. And my best efforts.
Did that push them to do it, to want to play Grand Theft Auto more? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
But like, it happened anyhow because I only had them half the time. And so like my son, my older son turned into an online gaming junkie, even though it wasn't here, you know, he was just Call of Dutying it up at his mom's house, you know, constantly. And that is a habit that has remained with him. Now, I've talked about him before with Smite and how he's just Smite all the time. He's 21 now, but still just as much of an online gamer as he was when he was like 16, you know. My younger kids have just barely dipped their toes into the world of gaming. and they haven't pushed the limits of how much they want to play. Like my daughter will sit down with her tablet and she'll play Minecraft for like an hour, and then she'll stop and she'll pivot over and she'll do something else. I recently let her start playing Plants vs. Zombies, the newer one that they put on PlayStation Plus a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
I was messing with it one day. She was interested, and I was like, yeah, sure, fine. She played it for like an hour on Saturday and an hour on Sunday, and then she just wandered away and did something else, So it's not something that I've really had to monitor with them yet. I do think that in the case of my younger kids, my wife would definitely step in if they started playing too much. Even if I was ignoring it, she would like put the hammer down and be like, no, go paint, go do something else, go dance, go run and play. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I guess the bottom line is, yeah, I believe in putting restrictions on kids, but nothing is harsh as what the Chinese government is doing.
Yeah. How about you, Max? Did you have any restrictions growing up with like gaming or too much TV or anything? It was never a thing I really struggled with. I never got in trouble for. I know my younger brother would come home and play, like when he was in high school, he would come home and play Gears of War. I literally talked about this today. He would come home and play Gears of War the moment he got home until dinner time, and then after dinner until like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning.
Oh, whoa.
Wow.
Whoa.
And he would just do it. I mean, that's just what he did. And, he would, I guess, got most of his homework done, I guess. I mean, he graduated, and he's got a master's. I mean, he's gone to grad school. But, I mean, it was definitely something that I know my parents were like, oh, he's playing too much. But they never, like, intervened and, like, did anything realistic about it. How about you? Was that something
Do you think that was do you think that was like a negative thing? Like, as you've seen him grow up? Like,
I mean,
do you think his life would have benefited from them intervening?
I dare say he is. I have two younger brothers. I dare say he's will be the most successful of the three of us. So,
Yeah,
so I don't know if it really did or not. I don't think it did. He's made friends that he still talks to from playing in the Xbox 360 days. So I don't think it has.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Did it stunt his potential? Maybe, I guess. Right? Could he have done more? I guess, maybe. But realistically, he's a relatively successful young man.
Yeah.
So
or maybe he just would have gotten into drugs instead.
Maybe he just would have gotten into the harder drugs instead, is really what you should be saying. But.
So, like my son, the 21-year-old, right? So the majority of his friends are people that he's met online playing games. And like they've traveled to visit each other and stuff like that. But he's probably got 10 friends locally, and like 2 or 3 of them were from high school, and the rest of them are all gamer friends, And so he turned 21 a couple weeks ago, and I had a party for him, and it was his 21st birthday. All the other guys are 21. He's the youngest in the group. So we threw a party, and I got him a couple cases of beer and a case of cider or whatever, and set them up in the backyard with the fire and stuff. They did not drink the beer. They hung out and played Smash on the projector. I set up the projector in the screen, and they sat out there and played Smash. They were super respectful, super nice, didn't tear the place up, cleaned up after themselves. Like the few drinks they did have, they put the bottles in the trash. They're like the nicest group of young people ever. So, how am I going to fault him for playing online and making these like super cool friends? And they all love hanging out together, and they're all nice, level-headed, relatively, I mean, in college or working good jobs, and it's fine. It's fine. He turned out fine.
People having hobbies is all right.
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah, the last thing I had, the last little interesting factoid is the esports industry in China is estimated it's estimated at a $360 million industry. That's what it's estimated at. I don't have $360 million, do you?
Yeah, but I'm not an industry.
I mean, I think that generates a lot of revenue for somebody.
For somebody, yeah. I mean, but what is it in the U.S.?
What about the industry Or like the industry that makes those like pins that you like click the top and it's got different colors in them, and you like have the red one and the green. Like, did they make $300 million? I don't know. Maybe it's not that much. They're not important
for a country that has however many billion people are in China. Yeah, that 300 million is not seeming like a whole lot. Like I could just win that in the lottery. That's not like
for a whole industry, right?
Like, it's not that big of a deal then. Okay.
I mean, none of us know what any numbers mean.
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of money to like go. Where's it gonna go? You know, like. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Does
the government own the industry? Like, who has the?
Well, I mean, what happens to somebody like
Tencent? Worth something.
You know, what happens to somebody like Tencent, where they're making a lot of games and now they're like losing their biggest market, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like, it's got to have a huge cooling effect on the gaming industry as a whole. That does business in China. Like, they're all dying to get rid of that, but it is what it is, I guess. Like, you do business in China and then China's there.
At their whim.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's true.
I mean, honestly, my take on it is sort of like, oh, well, I guess my next game I won't have to bother localizing into Chinese because it won't be worth it anymore. That'll make things simpler. I can't fit those in like 816 by 8 pixels anyway. Too big.
Nice. Well, there you go. Easy enough.
China solved.
Yeah, China solved. The gang solves the China crisis.
I hope tell all the kids to take up skateboarding. That'd be dope. China just like loses all of its gamers and they come back. It's just like, and now China has like the biggest, coolest skateboarding gangs and they're all super good at it because they can't play video games.
Well, yeah. I mean, like realistically though, what's that going to do to productivity, right? Like with all those kids focusing back on other things, you know, maybe China's productivity goes up a lot. You know, who knows? Who knows?
I mean, hopefully the country's productivity doesn't depend on children.
Well,
but
long term, Max. I mean,
like,
long
term, right? What happens in 20 years?
Yeah.
And those kids will grow up not playing games, and so like they won't let their kids grow up playing games. You know, it's
or will they just be like, cool, I'm 18 now. Now I can start playing video games.
Yeah, that could be it too.
Or will they do that? Yeah.
Plenty of people don't smoke or drink until they're old enough to smoke or drink, and then they do.
Yeah.
I mean, video games are great. We all love them. Like, all of us are adults and we all play video games. What I imagine would happen is just like, you'll play video games probably less as a kid and you'll still do it here and there. Maybe you won't have like a big like, oh yeah, I'm really into this one video game because I play it all the time online and I make friends. And then you'll turn 18 and you'll be like, oh, now I'm going to start playing some video games.
A lot.
Cigarettes and porn. I don't know.
Right. A lot. Yeah. You have to wonder like what the 18-year-olds are doing if they just like freak out and their head will explode and they just go all in on WoW or whatever the Chinese equivalent of WoW is, you know, like, yeah, it's interesting. So are there any regulations on adults or is it just strictly like you cross that 18?
Just strictly the under
and it's straight to the internet cafe, baby. Bring it. That's funny.
Yeah, Eric, if you could only play 3 hours of video games a week, imagine that life.
Well, yeah, it might be simpler.
A lot different for me.
Maybe I'd probably just pick some game that I could really play for a long time and just play that a lot. You know, like that's
well, not a lot. But
that's the trade-off for like being somebody like us who plays like a lot of games is that you don't get to go deep on any games. So I think if I weren't writing about games and I had limited time to play, I would pick like a Skyrim or, you know, an MMO and just play that exclusively and then just not worry about any of the new stuff.
Yeah, I was excited because I was like, oh, I don't have any games to review like coming up, but like I literally have a review coming out tomorrow for a game I just finished. I'm submitting another review later tonight that I just finished, and I'm almost done with another review that I wrote this week for a game. Like I was just like, oh, I got nothing, and then I just like bam, 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 and then there's like 2 more that I'm like debating about, like wanting to be like, I'll pick those up and that up because like that looks really cool. So
yeah,
it's kind of like
it's
a
cycle.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's a cycle of like burning yourself, and
Because
you
I
know.
look so forward to like, oh, like, it's right there. Like once I finish this review, I'm done, and then I'm like, oh, here's 3 more
That you just signed up for.
Well, I'm like, well, for me this time around, it's like I requested these like within months of each other, and they all just happen to hit like back to back to back, like that. So
Yeah.
you're just it's kind of how it is. But
honestly, playing 3 hours of games a week isn't. I don't think that's really even that much different than how I live my life.
Really.
Most of the weekdays, my time after work when I'm not running errands, or days when I'm not seeing friends or going to church or whatever, like I'll work on a game,
Yeah.
or work on music, or like be like, oh, cool, I can get some of my chores done. So I usually do like Saturday mornings if I'm free, I'll play video games for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then here and there during the week. But it's actually not crazy different from how I function.
Yeah.
And I make video games. I still love them. So that's sort of one thing that makes me think it wouldn't have that huge effect on people not being gamers when they get the opportunity.
Well, I think if I weren't gaming, I would probably be I would put my creative energies elsewhere. To me, like playing the games is a mean to an end. I like to write. And
interesting.
A few years ago, I was moaning about, how I was like not finding a good topic to write about. And my brother-in-law was like, dude, you play like games, you like movies, find a way to write about that shit. Because like I'm so compelled to write stuff, like Elliot's story with the cheese. I'm so compelled. I have this compulsion to write shit, and I have no place to put that energy. And so that's how I got into games writing. It was like more a means to an end, so I would have a focus, and I wouldn't just be like flailing around writing these crazy essays that no one would ever read. I would actually like get in a straight line and keep pursuing the same thing,
Yeah.
And
so you like iterate and focus.
So for me, playing the games is the symptom of the other illness, which is like the concept. So if I weren't doing that anymore, I would be right back like
a lot of like My Little Pony fan fiction, right?
Exactly, like just writing some crazy shit, and probably working on music that no one would listen to, and
haikus about Equestria.
Yeah. What Hogwarts house would you be in?
Applejack.
What Hogwarts house would you be in if you didn't play video games?
Slytherin. I'm a Slytherin for sure.
Are you a Slytherin?
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's funny.
Yeah, definitely.
Griff all the way, baby.
Oh yeah.
The other thing that makes me think of if and this is kind of a segue into, because you said, hey, you lazy bums, why don't you guys start bringing topics for discussion? This kind of segues into what I wanted to talk about. But when you've only got 3 hours to play games or so, most games are too freaking long. So like I've been with our like, what are you playing this week segments? It's been Dark Souls for like 2 months, right? Like, because I don't play, like I put in a few hours a week and I make steady progress and I love the game. But I've this past week I've gotten to the final boss, didn't quite beat him. I wrapped up one of the DLCs and got halfway through the other, and I was sort of like, I'm kind of done now. This is great. This is really well designed, but like I've been playing this for like so long. This game is so long. There's so much in it. I wish it were shorter. And it just makes me think that this might do something for short games, that you can, if you're limited to 3 hours a week, have a game you can beat in 3 hours. Like those kind of games are like really devalued, it seems like, even though there's like length has no, it's not a correlation to quality. You have really, really good short games and long games that are boring and check off your quests and Ubisofty.
No, you're absolutely nailed. I love a short game. I love a short game. Like that game that I was ranting about a couple weeks ago, which was actually, I was mispronouncing it on the show. I was calling it the Forbidden City. It's actually the Forgotten City.
That's quite a mispronunciation. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was calling it by the wrong name. Is what I was.
Yeah.
But that game, I think it was probably like 10 to 12 hours, and
nice.
Like one of the most satisfying games I've played in years. And I was like so satisfied when I got done with it. It was thoroughly entertaining the entire time. It didn't feel like there was a minute wasted in that game. And I love a short game. Because long games I won't beat. You know, like I'll play them and
Mhm.
I'll enjoy them. Like the Assassin's Creeds, that's a perfect example. I played the shit out of some Assassin's Creeds. I have never beat an Assassin's Creed game. I've never beat
Mhm.
a Grand Theft Auto game. I've probably
Oh, really?
played
They have endings.
hundreds of hours of Grand Theft Auto games in single player. Never beat one. Like I'll either fall off it or I'll get to a quest that pisses me off so bad that I just stop. Um,
hmm
so yeah, like I do enjoy a short game that I can actually beat, you know? Like those long games, like I'll beat them if I'm reviewing them, but if I'm just playing like on my own, nah, man. I hardly
Yeah.
ever beat a long game. I'm
Max,
like you.
how
I'm like I want this to be done now. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm satisfied. I just want this to be over with. I'm moving on to something else.
how long is Ocean's Heart, Max? Like,
So Ocean's Heart, if you're not tracking episode to episode, that's the game that I released in January that I've been worked on for a while. It's depending on how much of the side content you do, it's between 6 and 14 hours. Just it more than half the game is side quests and like hidden areas. So just like depending on how much of those you want to engage with or don't, and how I don't want to say good you are at the game, but like
sure.
how quickly you can figure out where to go and navigate around. Somewhere in that ballpark. I was
Okay.
surprised how varied it was. I was thinking it would be like 8 to 10, but like people are taking up to 20 in some cases, so longer than I thought.
It's a good length, you know? Like I think that is satisfying.
Yeah.
For a Zelda like, yeah, like totally
Mhm.
that's right in the sweet spot where I would want it to be. Yeah, one genre that I will stick with for 80 hours and beat is turn-based RPGs.
Yeah,
Huh.
I'm that
I
way
will
too.
stick with a turn-based RPG. I'll play that shit for 6 months if it takes me that long to beat it. Those Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold
Yeah.
Steel, I had those on my Vita. Man, like one game lasted me like a year. I would play it when I was on business trips and like on the airplane and in the hotel and then I put it down for like a month and then pick it back up when I was going to travel again or whatever. And yeah, I'll stick with those until they're done, you know, no matter how long it takes me. Bravely Default's another one, you know, stick with that all the way to the end. But other genres that get into those super long, nah, that is not my jam. What about you, Elliot? What's your feeling on the long versus short game debate?
There's some long games that I love, like Dragon Warrior 7. Dragon Warrior 7 was it called. It's called Dragon Quest 7 now. That game, when it first came out on the PlayStation, I believe was 4 or 5 discs long originally.
Oh my god.
It's something absolutely insane. And I saw that as a challenge. That was like my one summer vacation in school was like playing that. And I loved it. It was a great game, thankfully. But I like that sign. I used to love the PlayStation era games where that like Final Fantasy would come with like 3 discs. I loved that. To me, I was just like, this is so cool. It's like 3 discs worth of game. Because when I was younger, I equated like the amount of discs to the content, and like more discs equal better content, which is absolutely not true. But there's some games like the older Pokemon games, for example, I love. I think they're perfect length. The newer Pokemon games, I think, are like really short and super linear, and I like dislike that about that. So I I I find myself beating more games now that I'm writing about them because I try very hard to beat them. Some games like Monster Harvest, which I've just finished, you don't really finish it because it's like Stardew Valley in a lot of ways, where like you can't really beat it. It just like you can play through the cycles and then play through the cycles of seasons again, you know, or like Moonlighter, which I compare that game to a lot. In my mind, where like Moonlighter, you can eventually do all the dungeons, but like you can always like go more dungeon diving. You can always sell more. I can always make more money. So I like long games when they're good, and I guess I find most long games to be good. I'm a very story driven gamer. That's why I think I like turn based RPGs.
Because they tend to be more story driven.
Yeah, they're much more story driven in a lot of aspects. So I lean towards that a lot. And then I lean towards a lot of puzzle games a lot too, like a Tetris or a Sudoku style or Pit Cross. Like I love a Pit Cross. Like when the new Pit Crosses come out, I buy them. like almost day one every single time, because I love that puzzle aspect of it, where I just love sinking into that. Like, I do the crossword every day. Like, that's the kind of person I just like, that kind of style of whatever. I guess it's a game, because I play it on my phone. So to me, I'm like, it's a video game, even though it's just like a digital version of it. So like, I like those kinds of games. And in the last year or so, I've really leaned towards more roguelike games, which are not very super story driven. Which is why, like, Hades, I love Hades because it's a roguelike that I really enjoy, and it's a great, phenomenal story. They do such an amazing job of telling a great story with a style of game that is not traditionally known for storytelling. Like, it's just not how those games work. You can't do it. But they found a way, which is what's so cool about it. So I guess I didn't really give you an answer there thinking about it, because it just depends. I'm very wishy-washy. Yeah, but I also don't mind like not playing a game, like playing a game for like Pokemon. When the new Pokemon came out, I played it pretty hardcore, and then I was like, I'm not enjoying this, so I just stopped for like 3 months, and then I was like, I should go back and finish it, because like, it's Pokemon, and I've never not like finished a Pokemon game.
I have obligations here.
If I don't finish the Pokemon game, I'll like die as a ghost, and my unfinished business will be not playing the Pokemon game.
Like Pokemon.
I have to.
Pokemon Sword forever.
So.
All right. Well, Elliot, I'm going to need you to take that take, preheat your oven to about 450, put that take in there, and heat it up. This tepid dog.
Yeah.
Games are good. Games are good if they're quality good. Doesn't matter what that.
But like some
games,
but
that brings me to
a hard problem. Well, like Microsoft Flight Simulator. Like, how do you beat that game?
That's not the goal.
There's right. Like, that's kind of like.
You fly to your house. You fly to your house.
I
thought we covered this.
Yeah, you just fly to your house.
Actually, yeah, this is true. Yeah, we talked about this last week.
Your house, and then you're good.
Yeah, it sounds to me, Elliot, like you enjoy like long, involved experiences, and then you also enjoy things that you can just pick up and put down.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like little puzzly things.
Yeah.
They're very much two entirely separate. Like, there's not really overlap. It's sort of like comparing like an SNL sketch to a Lord of the Rings. Like, neither of them are trying to do the same thing. The formats it's not comparable. Like Heracross or whatever, Pictocross Heracross is Pokemon. Pictocross compared to Skyrim, they're both games, but like, that is meaningless.
Yeah.
The same way that so it's interesting that length is still considered to some extent like a quality thing in a lot of ways. What I want to talk about was, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but there was a game that came out this past week or the week before. I'm not on top of things. I think it was called Summer of 58, and it came out on Steam, and it's a horror game that's about 45 minutes or an hour long, I think.
Okay.
And and Steam has a policy where, for any reason, if you've played a game for less than 2 hours, you can return it. So what happened was, this developer put out this game that's about 45 minutes or an hour long or whatever, and it got great reviews. It's like got like that like very positive review on Steam. Like, everybody's giving it great reviews, and they're also getting just like a massive amount of refunds and not making any money off of their game. Ooh. Because Steam's policy is just like,
2 hours.
You return anything if you played it less than 2 hours. Anything less than 2 hours, you've just gotten started. Like, there's this inherent games are what, 10 to 100 hours on average, right? Thing that Steam has baked into their critical infrastructure that just does not serve the diverse array of experiences that games can deliver to a person.
That's really interesting. I reviewed a game. It was the Information Society game, Fire Tonight. And I was like, okay, this is going to be my vacation game. I'm going to play this while I'm on vacation. And so, like, the second day of vacation, I was like, oh, I've got like an hour or two. Like, my wife took the kids down to the playground, and I was like, I'm going to sit down and play this game. And 45 minutes later, I was done. I was like, oh my, this is not my vacation game. Like, this is over. But it was a good little game. Like, I gave it a decent score, but yeah, I hadn't considered, beyond having people say, "Oh, this is just a short little game," what a danger it kind of is to release a game of that length, because you may very well be just shooting yourself in the foot, like as far as monetization goes on Steam. It's a really interesting point. I had never considered it before. Do you think that there are probably games out there that could have been 45 to an hour long that they padded out to make them longer? Do you think that that's something that developers would consider doing just to...
I wouldn't be surprised, yeah. Especially if a game is hitting like an hour and a half. If you've got a tight game, like your ideal experience takes an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, and you're like, ooh, we gotta hit above that 2-hour mark just because Steam is like the primary distribution platform for a PC game, which is the easiest one to release on. Then, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's happening.
Gotta get some mini games in there. Gotta put some whack-a-mole machines in there.
Yeah, or just
get some shit in there to slow them down.
We're gonna move the quest giver to one side of the map and the objective to the other side. You just got to walk back and forth, and that'll add 5 minutes. And if we do that a few times, that'll push you over.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just like, we're going to add you kind of have to add some experiences that aren't going to serve what you're trying to do to hit that, which is, I think just a very unfortunate side effect of how a lot of the people who have been holding the dominant narrative of what a video game is. Even we've talked about this before, that we're a video games podcast, but none of us play Candy Crush, which is like that's a video game. It's a hugely popular video game. We don't even know what it's about. We don't know shit about Roblox, and it's like a crazy popular video game. We play one kind of video game, and historically that's been the dominant kind of video game. But games are just becoming a lot more things to a lot more people, and they're able to offer a much wider array of experiences, and the infrastructure hasn't quite caught up to that yet. Whether it's people like us, on the reporting and analysis infrastructure, or Steam on the critical deliverer of the game infrastructure, it's wild to me that games don't have approximate playtimes on them. A movie knows how long it goes. You can tell from a book about how long it'll take by how fat it is, unless it's got pictures. But
yeah, I'll tell you what. When I'm getting ready to review a game, there is nothing more handy than when a PR person puts in the email approximate playtime 8 hours.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh yeah, I can do that shit. Yes. Fine, I'll take that one. But if something is this could go on for the rest of your life,
right?
I don't know if I want to review that.
I had a game that I was not really enjoying that I was reviewing, and I kept being I know I have to get close. I'm on the island that the necklace is on, or I'm on the island to summon the thing. I know I am. And it just kept being another level. And it was you're on the first level of the staircase. And you're okay. You're oh, I got to it was 4 staircase levels. I was oh my gosh, can we please be done? I'm so over this game.
Filler episodes in an anime.
Yes, it was totally. The charging up, the constant charging up episode. I was just I know I'm so close. Just barrel through it. Because I've only had 3 games that I have not beaten for reviews, and they were a roguelike game where you don't really kind of beat it, you just kind of die realistically, or you just you make your fortune. Chivalry 2 you don't really beat because it's an online multiplayer game. It's just an online battle game. You don't really beat it. And then this Monster Harvest game where you can kind of indefinitely just keep farming. So and so I've been a little proud of myself because I definitely will like Breath of the Wild. I started it, got through the first 3 of the 4 dungeons, and just stopped. I got busy with something and just never went back to it. And I love that game, but now I'm I don't really want to go back and just start with the last dungeon because it's been years now. But I also do want to play the new Breath of the Wild when it comes out. So what do I do? Do I just go restart the game and only go to that dungeon that I haven't gone to, and then be watch a video about the final fight to understand what happens? Is that what I do? I don't know. It's or do I reinvest all that time into it?
No, you just play the new game. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it and play the new game. I did the same thing with Breath of the Wild. I was one of the weirdos that played it on Wii U, but I didn't have a Switch when it came out, and I didn't want to spend $300, and they had copies of the Wii U version and they didn't have copies of the Switch version. So I played it on Wii U, and I did a similar thing. I remember right where I was when I stopped. It was when I was there was like a little stealthy area you had to go. I don't remember. I can picture it. Yeah, and that's where I stopped. But yeah, I'm not gonna finish that shit before the new one comes out. I'm just gonna play the new one. I don't have time for all that. Come on now.
As someone who's put probably over 100 hours into that game, I'm still with Eric. Like, I think that game is a masterpiece. I think I don't count it as playing a video game because I'll open it up for reference all the time to be like, how does this UI look? Like, how does the start menu work? Or just like, I will play for like 20 minutes and just like, oh yeah, I've got a sword that I need to go take to an Octorok to make it not rusty. And I'll just like run an errand because it's just enjoyable to be in the world to me. But yeah, don't finish that.
Great.
Yeah, I loved it too. I really loved it. Like, I just started playing Skyrim again, speaking of Skyrim, and games that you can play and never finish. And I'm not going to finish that shit. I finished it once 8 years ago or 10 years ago or whenever it was. Mm-hmm. And it was like Max said, I just wanted to be in the world. My son has been playing it because he and his buddies got into Elder Scrolls Online and he pivoted over to Skyrim. And I saw him playing it and he was blasting dudes with his fire from his hands. And I was like, I want to blast some dudes with some fire in my hands. So I started it up. There's no intention of getting through that thing, but I just enjoy running around in Skyrim and all the weird shit that happens. So yeah, don't feel guilty about not finishing long things.
To kind of loop it back to Summer of 58, the developer, this is what I knew about the game before you mentioned it. The developer literally tweeted out that they're going on an indefinite hiatus from making games because of this.
Yeah. Wow, really? That's tragic. Is that the game? Like, do you guys know what the game is about? Is that the one about the kid and his mother and they're like going on a car trip or something? There was one that came out recently, like where the mom discovers that she's dying, and then I must be thinking of a different game.
I don't know. I've only heard of like I've heard of the refund thing, and then the developer being like, I'm done making games. This is like destroying me, which is super sad.
That is tragic. Because, and people loved the game. And I mean, part of that just shows what dicks consumers can be, too. Like, you played that game. You loved that game. You fucking asshole asking for your money back. Sure. Like, no other medium would allow you to do that. Well, how
many people do you think actually play the game for like any game for an hour 45 minutes on Steam and then refund it? Do you think there's a large margin of people that are like sitting with a timer close by to be like, I'm just gonna play this as much as I can and then like return it?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know if it's a large margin, but I do think people treat games as demos, where they're like, oh, I'll play this for around an hour. I don't think they're trying to like maximize their time with it, but they'll download a game and they'll play it and be like, I'm not really feeling it. I have literally 3,000 other games on my list. If I'm not feeling it, why should I invest? There's so many games. Yeah. Or I think like the play where that refund policy really shines is it like you go to play a game and it just doesn't work on your system. Then it's just like, oh yeah, no questions asked is ideally what you want there for everybody involved. But
how do you think that policy could be restructured so that it would work for everybody? Do you think there could be like a 2 hours or credits? Like you can like put a thing in your game just like a trophy would ping.
A Steam achievement, exactly.
Yeah, it would just ping when you hit the credits, and if you got that one, like you don't get the refund.
Can't refund. Yeah. I'd seen that suggested. Idea. Yeah. I think like what would be great is if runtimes were just part of your games. Like you say how much memory it needs, you say how much RAM it needs, and you say approximately how long it'll take. And then, like, for a game that's 45 minutes, if you're not feeling it within the first 20 minutes...
time, right? Time it out?
Percentage of playtime. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'd seen some people say that, like, developers could game that, where they say their game is 45 minutes, even though it's a 20-hour game, so they would bypass the return period too fast, but... I don't think that's that big a deal. And if you've got a 20-hour game and you're saying it's 45 minutes, then you're lying.
Yeah, I feel if that happened, though, like, the blowback would be like, can you believe these developers are doing this? Instead of, like, can you believe these asshole consumers?
And shortening how long your game takes isn't a serviceable advertising. Like, saying your game is only going to take an hour if it takes 100, you got the wrong audience, man.
Yeah.
So, and I think for so many other reasons, just like we discussed, having runtime is such a valuable thing for players to know what they're getting into, as well as for developers, so that there's that understanding going in, so you're not disappointed when a game takes either too long or too short. But I think because of just like the habit that we all have of equating, this game is 3 discs long, that's a great value for my money. I think some of it is developers don't, when they have a short game, they kind of don't want to admit it, or they're afraid to. Like I did see this game called Arietta of the Spirits or something came out. It's a cute little Zelda like indie game. And they have right on their Steam page, like, this game takes about 5 hours to complete. And it's got like a cute little GIF of the main character around that. And I was like, this is great. I've never seen this before.
Smart.
Yeah. And I think they added that in the wake of this refund situation, where they're like, if we just have this understanding going in, that'll really clear things up and head them off. I'd really like to see things go that way.
Yeah, just set that expectation. You might gain more consumers, like by setting that expectation.
I think
like I said about the reviews, I'll take that short one. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's funny. So before we wrap, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Kotaku article that I put in our Slack channel.
Yeah. I'd love to briefly summarize this for listeners, but I had such a hard time understanding what they were trying to say.
I literally read the first paragraph or so, and I was like, okay, I'll just have Eric explain it. I was like, I'll just pull a Max and a Joe and be like, I'll just be like the guy. I'll just be the Joe of this one this time.
Yeah. Normally I don't read Kotaku articles because there are just so many ads that I can't scroll. And this time I was like, no, Eric said, Eric said to read this. I'll read it. I read halfway through and I'm like, this is weird. And it stops so suddenly. And I was about to click away and I was like, huh. And I just scrolled down like 20 more inches past the ads and I was like, oh, there's the rest of the article.
So basically there was an event where journalists could come and play Far Cry 6 online. Ubisoft holds these events, and they used to do them in real life, and the real life ones were fantastic. I went to the Far Cry 5 event a few years ago, and they held it at this ranch outside of San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
And they had the ranch all decked out with the decorations from like the game, so it looked like something you would come across in the open world in the game. And
it looked like a cultist had taken over a remote part of the West.
There were like the flags and stuff that they had in the game, and Greg Brick, the actor who played the bad guy, he came flying in on a helicopter and came down and landed and stood and like preached in this old hay,
that's cool.
Thing.
Cool.
And they had people there cooking all this barbecue, and they had 4-wheelers. You could like go do a 4-wheeler. They had guys there that would teach you how to shoot crossbows and shit. Like, it was fantastic. It was the most fun. So obviously they can't do that now. So instead it was sit in front of your computer for 5 hours and play on our new streaming platform and try the new game, which is kind of the best anybody can manage right now. And it's fine.
I mean, it's cool that they can even do a streaming thing like that.
Yeah, it is cool. It is cool. So this Kotaku article, apparently Kotaku was not invited to participate. And I don't really know why. Kotaku, I know, has some bad relationships with like some of the major, they like have a bad relationship with Bethesda. They have a bad relationship with Ubi. I think probably because they consider themselves to be like the whistleblowers of gaming journalism.
Yes.
Right. Like,
and to be fair, there's a lot of whistles to be blown.
Yeah, to be fair, there
whistles are just hanging off the game industry. Like,
it is true, but they are definitely the self-appointed, more righteous than thou whistleblowers of the game industry, right? And so I don't know if this guy was just salty that they didn't get invited, or like, I mean, they should know that they don't have a good relationship with Ubisoft because they write all these exposés about things, about legitimate issues or whatever. But this article is entitled, "If you're going to preview Far Cry 6, at least do it right." Right. And the thinking is, like Far Cry 6, just by existing, like a lot of the Far Cry and other Ubisoft games, kind of makes a political statement, you know, and is it the correct political statement, and are you analyzing that political statement? So it takes place in a Cuba-like nation, and there is a bad guy. Like, they always get like these really spectacular performances out of their bad guys. So in this case, it's Giancarlo Esposito who plays the bad guy, and he is the dictator on the island, and he's raising his son to be, you know, his replacement. And there's a big revolution against him, and you get caught up in the revolution. So no spoilers there. That's all in the trailers. Everybody, you know, knows that. Yeah. So, like, basically this article was saying, hey, all you other gaming outlets that participated in this, why aren't you calling out Ubisoft's like bad political history? Why aren't you calling out like the questions this game raises, and whether or not it should even exist? And, you know, why aren't you mentioning, you know, all of the problems that Ubisoft has had in the last 5 years regarding like sexual harassment and all of those issues? Why aren't you being us? Is essentially, this is really what I got from the article. Like, why aren't you writing this article the way Kotaku would write this article? And it just felt so shitty to me when I was reading this article.
They're essentially calling you out.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for
like,
sure. Yeah.
You are the people they're talking about.
I am the people they're talking about. And I super didn't go into depth on this one. Like, I sat there, I played the game for a few hours. I chatted with a few folks that work for Ubisoft. I had a lot of fun with the game. They paired me up with this guy, Hip Hop Gamer, who is just like the most enthusiastic human being on the face of the earth. Like, he is so excited to be there all the time. I remember him from the Far Cry 5 event because he was walking around with a camera crew just screaming and yelling about how fabulous it was, you know. And so just like playing any game with that guy is going to be a ton of fun, you know. And so like what I did was I put together a little half-hour video with some snippets from my play time and just showed a few missions and kept it spoiler free, and just wrote a very short article about the mechanics and that the game is coming out, posted it, boom, done. Right. So I should also say that before Far Cry 5, before that event, I was really prepared to go in there and ask a lot of tough questions about that game. And because that game takes place in the United States, and the bad guys in that game are cultists. It's a religious Christian cult. And, you know, the cult has taken over this small area of Montana, or actually a large area of Montana. And you get caught up, you know, in the anti-cult group, you know, like trying to free the land back from the grip of this cult. And the bad guys are basically regular people who've been brainwashed to participate in the cult. So before that event, they said, you know, you can set up interviews with any of these people. And it was like, you know, the actor guy and the director of the game and the producer of the game and the writer of the game. And then one of the people was this expert on cults. And I was like, oh, cool, fun, neat.
Yeah.
I can talk to that guy. Like, I definitely want to talk to that guy. So I bought the guy's book and I read the guy's book, and had all sorts of questions about, you know, whether or not it was right for them to kind of exploit cult members, you know, as the bad guys in this game, because there's a lot of psychology around like how people get pulled into cults and the manipulations that the cult leaders use in order to suck people in, and so on and so forth. And so I went there ready to write this piece about, you know, is it right to do this game about cults? And I was all researched. I had all these notes. Turned out Cult Guy wasn't there. Like, he had a conflict. He couldn't show up, right? So I got there and I was like, oh, barbecue. Oh, look, a helicopter. I was totally. And then I played the game and I was like, because at one point during the day, you just go into this barn and play the game for hours, you know?
Yeah.
And I played the game and I was like, oh, you know, this is just a Far Cry game. Like, it's not that serious. Like, I was making this into something that it's probably not. And like, they're just using these guys as the bad guys. But I mean, it's just a Far Cry game, and the bad guy is just another Far Cry bad guy, and it's just not that serious. And I don't feel like I need to thrust my own, interpretations onto this game when really it's just another silly Far Cry game. And maybe it was because like I did meet the actor that played the guy and I interviewed him, and I did meet and interview the director of the game and a bunch of these other people. And I asked a few questions around that stuff and they gave like reasonable answers, but I didn't like drill into them because once I got there, like my take on the whole thing just kind of pivoted, So going into this Far Cry 6 situation, I didn't expect it to be anything but another Far Cry game, which is exactly what it is. Like the story changes, the setting changes, but you got your bad guy and he's got his armies and you're infiltrating these little areas and taking them over. I mean, it's a very, they changed a few of the mechanics each time, but it's kind of just like a boilerplate stencil, Far Cry game. And so I didn't give it this one a whole lot of forethought because the last time all my forethought just went right out the window as soon as I played the game, right? So I think that's probably the experience that a lot of these people had having played this game. Like they sat down, they played through the first 4 or 5 hours of the game and they're like, yep, this sure is Far Cry. And we all know what this is and we know what to expect from it. And they got to set it somewhere. Like they have to, like make up a setting that's like something in the real world, like they've put it in every other area. Like why not put it in a Cuba-like island, and so I didn't really see the need to dig into the politics of the thing that much. And I'm not 100% sure that that's my job. Like that's not what our site does. We are not that site. We don't do big political expose articles, like we report on games and playing games and the experience of playing games. And every now and then we dig into like the making of the games, and talk to the people that make the games. But we're not the site that does like,
that's going to be like talking to people who have studied and are experts on that sort of representation. Or like have you even necessarily have the resources to be like, hey, we talked to a professor who studies the relationships between these sorts of people, or like has that understanding. If you've listened to our podcast, listeners, we don't know what the fuck. We're not qualified to talk. Like, that's just as problematic.
Well, that's just it. Yeah, I would feel like if I were to do all that research and put all that like thought into analyzing Far Cry, what am I doing with my time? Like it's not. I don't know. Like I'm not shitting on people that do that because that's their site, that's their gig, that's what they do.
I do think,
and I'm not telling them that they need to do it like me, but I don't want them to tell me that I need to do it like them. fuck you, man. Like this is a part-time volunteer gig, dude. This isn't my job, and like trade secret for the majority of game writers. That's how it is. Like most people don't get paid for being a game writer, or if they do it as like a part-time thing or freelance or they're struggling, nobody's getting rich writing about video games. So for this major outlet just to like kind of shit on all these other outlets, because they name names, they link out to articles and talk about what a poor job they did because they didn't do it the way Kotaku would do it. I don't know. It just felt really kind of shitty.
Yeah. It was also it to me, and like I do think it is valuable to examine things in that sort of light, because Ubisoft is, like you said with that last one, they could do things much more generically. Like they, as much as they say like, oh, we're not trying to make a political statement, like you don't need to, like a couple years after the Malheur wildlife thing, when, like White Ring militias took over an area in the Northwest United States, set a game where a right-wing militia takes over an area in the Northwest United States. Or you can be a lot more generic, and lots of games are. And like, there is an examination that is there. Or like Ubisoft also, was it last year or the year before, they made that game where the bad guys were like false flags, Black Lives Matter people? Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
No, I do not remember that. What was that one?
That was like correct me if you remember it better than I do, Elliot, but it might have been a tie-in with Watch Dogs or something like that. Or it was like maybe a mobile game. Yeah, but you essentially played the character that you played was investigating a protest movement that was using a lot of they had like the Black Lives Matter fist, and the protesters were the bad guys. They were secretly being hired by the shadowy government figures to do like false flag stuff and be violent, and it was very much like, do you remember like all those memes about Antifa super soldiers that people believed?
Yeah.
It was it was basically that, except in this case, they are sort of taking like the Wolfenstein approach of like, except instead of Nazis, it was anti-fascists were secretly the bad guys that were paid for by the government. And it was during the Black Lives Matter protest the other year. It was like really weird and bad. And like, yeah, we need to talk about that.
Okay, so like, admittedly,
it should be, but also Kotaku's like I pulled up the article here. They've got a line that says, and this isn't even that. This is just part. This is not quite nearly that egregious or extreme. But Kotaku has this article that says, or this line that says, the underlying tensions, referring to like whether Ubisoft and like having a game about shooting people should be set in like a more nuanced political situation. They're like, this underlying tension should be the heart of deciding what Far Cry might be and whether it will be worth engaging with. Like, where they're literally saying your article should be mainly about this before you've played the game. You need to decide on this single criteria whether it will be worth playing the full game.
Right.
Which is just like, it's taking such an incoherent shit on everybody who wrote an article.
The interesting thing, though, too, when you look at the comments, there are a lot of people who are like, "Oh, pretty bold to call other publications." It seemed like Kotaku was loading up on the rage bait from the start. Like, it seems like there's a lot of people who are like, "This seems like a kind of like bullshitty like editorial."
Yeah, I think I think 99% of Kotaku's audience hates them because I've never seen a positive comment on a Kotaku article.
I mean, a lot of people
it's kind of their brand, yeah.
Are kind of shitting on Far Cry, but there's a lot of them shitting on the editor. Like, they're like, "This is pretty terrible. What a terrible job you've done."
A lot of times there is some really, really terrible stuff in the comments because when I used to read Kotaku, I'll read the comments on Twitter because I'll read the headlines, not click in, and I'm like, well, maybe there'll be some details in the comments because I don't want to go through all those ads. And there's just people are very mean on there.
Yeah. I do my best actually not to read Kotaku because most of the time it gets kind of irritates me. But I did see somebody commenting, like somebody whose feelings were legit hurt by this article, who got like called out specifically in this article and was like, "Hey, like." Be cool, man. I saw that on Twitter, and so I had to click through and see the actual article, and then I was kind of like, yeah, be cool. Like come on. Like,
yeah.
Like, we all know that Ubisoft does some questionable things, and that they have a storied history of poor behavior that they may or may not be improving upon. But that doesn't mean that every single article about a Ubisoft game has to go into that. Some of their game settings have been problematic. And the reason I looked into that Far Cry 5 thing before I went was because before playing the game, I found it problematic. Yeah, I was like, what are they doing? This is crazy. Why would they do this? And then I played the game and I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
They kind of don't really do anything with it.
Exactly. Like, it's just, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily have a solid take on it other than I thought this article was kind of like just bitchy and uncool to the other people who are just trying to like do their thing,
Yeah.
No, it's interesting to see. It's an interesting thought, especially on this side of the the aisle.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like the one time I did kind of write something that took a political stand, my picture ended up on the front page of the Daily Stormer with the headline,
Really?
"Fuck you, Eric Hodder." So I'm
wait,
not
wait.
real jazzed about
Yeah.
going into shit like that again. You know, like that's not really where I want to be in life in general.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need that sort of focus on me from that particular group.
Definitely
of
not
people.
with your misdemeanors. You definitely don't need that kind of focus, right?
I will say that webpage is now a 500 internal service error. Their Nginx server can't direct you there anymore.
Oh yeah, I think there was some suing that went on with them. So yeah, you can't actually find my "fuck you, Eric Hodder" article anymore. And I will say, like, for professional haters, they hate really well. Like that, it was like, holy shit, they eviscerated me in a very Nazi like way. Yeah, they were.
Yeah, I mean, that is another good point. Is like, there are, like, when you even just like you get a little bit of this looking at comments on Kotaku articles, like you've got people who are clearly like very hateful coming in for a fight to harass. Like Kotaku articles, like the writers are aware that is going to, and frequently, like, it's not cool that happens.
I mean, look,
like,
we're talking about it, right? I mean, like, they've kind of done what they wanted, right? This is what they wanted. Right?
I mean, I don't think they wanted I mean, I don't know that they necessarily.
Is any publicity good publicity for them, though? I mean, it's Kotaku.
I don't want to assume that of them. I want to assume that they're
anyone who's into games, who follows games regularly, who goes on game sites, like, I personally don't know anyone who's like, oh yeah, Kotaku is like the first place I go. Like everyone everyone I know is like, oh, Kotaku is like one place, right? Like,
honestly, before the advertisements got so bad over the past couple of years, it was one of the first places I went. I usually I do seek out like that analysis stuff where there is some more thought put into it rather than like, oh yeah, the shooting in this game is really good. I guess I don't care that much. Like, I care about the story, and like I love reading an analysis. Like, okay, what is this saying? And I think there is a place for that, and it's cool if you're going to do that. I find that really valuable. But doing that, there is kind of an awareness that there are horrible people who will come at you. Yeah. And demanding that literally everybody who writes an article about a game at all expose themselves to these horrible trolls is a weird, like, hey, jump into this dangerous place with me if you're going to write about media at all. Like,
yeah, very much so. Yeah. And like you said, I do value that analysis, and I do think that a lot of people that write for Kotaku and have written for Kotaku back when I used to read it, I would read some of their pieces and I'd be like, ooh, brave. Like, ooh, very brave to go there on a regular basis, just like throwing themselves like in front of the fire over and over and over again. And yeah, on a level, I do appreciate that. And I appreciate their commitment to investigative journalism, you know, at least how they used to be, because I don't really read the site too much anymore. Yeah, it was just the tenor of calling everybody else out for not being as committed to that that I kind of was like, oh, uncool, dude, uncool. Well, on that note, we've probably gone a little long.
Yeah. So anyway, remember, you can always check out more of our stuff on GamingNexus.com.
More of our non-political.
Yeah.
More the of shooting is good. The shooting is good.
The frame rate's
That's what we got
excellent.
for you. That's what we got.
We got tepid takes and lukewarm lines, baby.
There you go. So you guys got anything else?
No.
Cool. Yeah, I'm good to wrap it on up.
All right, guys. Well, we will be back next week to our new format of Wednesday evenings, Thursday mornings. So don't get too hurt that we were a day late and $1 short. So other than that, I guess we will just catch you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye,
Our new format where Elliot actually asks us to do research. I don't like this.
Yeah, boo.
Yeah,
Boo.
I know. Oh, no.